saying the environment has to be changed.
What we're saying is have a heart.
We've got to be able to regenerate our
There'll
economy.
be people who are kind, people who are cruel, but that's life. You can be bigoted about pigeons. I'm fine with that.
Welcome back. We've been looking at Bukit Brown, and like many issues, there are always different perspectives, and it's a matter of finding the right balance. What we want to talk about now is the competing issues of conservation versus development. Where does one have to give way to the other, and how do you find the perfect balance? First of all, to visit the question again, why conserve Bukit Brown when that is valuable real estate that can be used for an 8-lane motor roadway, as well as to build 15,000 houses for 50,000 people? How do you balance that persuasive reason for just wanting to conserve Bukit Brown for the environment, for the heritage, and how do we balance the cost? Because the government also has to balance their books.
I think the way I see it, you can have conservation and development at the same time. In fact, what makes for meaningful development is development that doesn't obliterate living spaces that you want to have in the future. And that's what the conservation is about. So I think that there's a smart, sensible, ecologically sensitive way of doing development. And
At a higher cost though.
that's fine. Everything has a cost. I mean, it is what you value. If you
That
value
trade-off
it
is worth it.
Sure, if you value it enough, you pay for it,
Okay.
right? So, I think that we had spoken earlier about this idea of Bukit Brown as a possible heritage cemetery park. So what will a heritage cemetery park do? Well, if Bukit Brown were to be developed as such a park, and particularly now that it's on the World Monuments watch list of a site of significant cultural heritage to be preserved and to be respected. If it were to be transformed into a park, what will happen is it will then serve the needs of present generation of Singaporeans, 5.3 million, and future generations of Singaporeans up to 7, 8, 10 million, as opposed to serving the needs of 50,000 people who'll be lucky enough to live in that space. Beautiful space next to the natural, the MacRitchie Reservoir. But that's only 50,000 people.
Okay, are you suggesting that the park can exist on its own without further development, without further making it more accessible to more people?
No. It should be developed. It should be
So
consciously developed.
what would be
as a park.
required to develop that park so that it can become accessible to a lot more people, rather than people just to visit Bukit Brown and enjoy what's there already?
Well, people would go there to visit, to enjoy what's there, and it might be of sufficient significance, interest, and appeal, such that you don't just have nature lovers and bird watchers and joggers and walkers and families. You also have tourists, for example, who want to come to this place because it's culturally significant.
But how do they come? Shouldn't there be a champion? Shouldn't there be a body looking after the development of that area, guiding the development so that it is not overdone, but at the same time making sure that the features that it can share with people are fully enjoyed?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, so this is not a private park. This is something which the government can take over as a project. This can be a national project.
We've looked before at what we can do. we imagine, I think, what we can do to Bukit Brown to make it a park. And it already has roads, small roads, streams cutting through. So you put things like facilities, benches, lightings. Mosquito is a problem, so clear that. And with the MRT coming up, that could bring in the crowds as well.
That gives access to the place for the public. With MRT there, wonderful. It's there already. and it will serve a much larger population than just the lucky residents of the future.
The area is big, you see, and there can be a compromise between cultural heritage and natural heritage. But I see the URA declared that they want to create 20 new parks. Maybe they have my public park, you see. So there's a lot of space for parks. So ideally, why not use Bukit Brown as one of those parks? I mean, the size, of course, can be negotiated. I mean, we can compromise. You don't have it all 200 over hectares, you see. But they want 20 new parks in Singapore.
But
So why
probably
can't
this
this
is located where the people, the dwellers are.
What's the problem? I mean, you have a MRT station being there, already constructed. With the MRT station, people can come easily, no problem.
Yeah, but what I'm trying to get at is now there seems to be a lot of support that came with Bukit Brown when they found that Bukit Brown was being threatened. Is it any different from the situation you would have faced in the past, when there was a social cause that you wanted to fight for, champion?
Well, in some ways, perhaps it's a new thing, and it's fairly unprecedented, the public response. Although, I don't know, for Chek Jawa, it seems that because the Nature Society initiated the drive to conserve it, and then it found a lot of public support too. I'm not quite sure what parallels there are between Chek Jawa and Sungai Buloh, for example, for Bukit Brown. But I think those were natural areas, whereas this was seen like as government property, because this was a municipal cemetery. It was taken over by the SLA, I would imagine, and so and plus it's an old cemetery, and I think for some reason as a society we're very unsentimental, or at least the government is very unsentimental about cemeteries. In most societies, burial places are sacred grounds. You don't touch, I mean, because that's where your ancestors are. There's the whole spirit and origins of your people. In Singapore, we don't seem to lay much store by burial grounds. So we have generations of wiping out and removing cemeteries. It happened to Bidadari.
I think the main problem is from the government point of view, you see. The cost for them is that they want the area for housing. They want to increase the population to 6.97 million. So they think that that's a place where they can accommodate some portion of the population. But there are a lot of experts or architects like Teh King Soon, for example, who have made statements like, or have studied the area, like the whole of the coastline, southern coast. Right. He says that if you sort of move away the container port,
Which is going to be moved to.
It will
the
be
container
done,
port, right, you can put in 2 more million people, house 2 more million in that southern stretch, all the way to Tuas, from Keppel Harbour, all the way to reclaimed land to Tuas. You can put 2 million people. Now we have 5.4. If you can put 2 million there, you can get 7+ million. So you don't need to develop Bukit Brown if you think in that term, you see. So I think the government has to consider all these.
I think there's a very important point that Dr. Ho raised, and that is that when you speak about earlier on this question of conservation versus development, let's say you look at development. So we can't stop development. I mean, we don't want to stagnate as a city or as a society. So the question then that has to be asked is this place really needed for housing and for this road, right? I mean, if after looking at everything and looking very carefully, you come to the conclusion that yes, it is needed, there's no other space, then we've got nothing to say. But I think that's the question that has not been adequately looked at. That certain assumptions were made, perhaps by the planners. I'm sure they're very comprehensive, but perhaps limited in their consideration of what other value does Bukit Brown have besides real estate.
But hasn't the government response been a sort of accommodation to your wishes, in the sense that they reduced the number of graves that were to be removed and they have actually built a bridge? Hasn't there been some accommodation done? Is that enough? Are you happy with it?
Point of view is yes, it's the overhead road is definitely better than a surface road. But to a large extent, it's killing the life of the place. And if for
So it's
for
not
us,
an acceptable compromise.
Yeah,
It-
for
it's-
us, the way forward is a park. I mean, that's if I mean, I think that's the only way it can be sustained in Singapore as something valuable, probably as a park. Then with a major road cutting through it, unfortunately, that proposal goes down the hill.
even
if it
though it's
can't-
an overhead bridge.
Yeah, it's a very large. It's 8 lanes. It's like a PIE through a very central area of it. And just imagine the noise.
It's not just the natural, affecting the natural environment. I think even the removal of the graves, by the way, one of the graves affected is the Un Chim Neo grave. It is one of the largest graves in Bukit Brown. Magnificent, huge, almost as big as Ong Sam Leong's grave, which is the largest grave.
Which is how big?
2
Oh.
basketball courts.
2 basketball courts?
2 or 3 basketball
Yeah.
courts.
Okay.
The last time I calculated 50 over plots. That means normally a grave is 1 plot. I think the Ong Sam Leong grave was.
It cannot be relocated.
No,
It's on a hill and it's
No, Ong Sam Leong is not affected for now. We are talking about the Un Chim Neo grave, which was just recently discovered,
Yeah.
but it had been overgrown. But it is a magnificent grave in terms of its size and its grandeur. That will be removed. That will be exhumed. The highway will cut through that. It's one of the affected graves.
The expressway to get built with the bridge and whatnot, it will be a good compromise, provided, there are no alternative. But the big question is that, has we explored the alternative?
I think if we talk about alternatives, you're also talking about good governance. I mean, which the government has always talked about, but and to find something that is not just comprehensive but also forward-thinking, progressive. Already, Singapore has 13% of the land surface that is devoted to surface roads. I mean, this is not good governance. This is not pragmatic for the country. The former transport minister has admitted that they cannot build roads are not the way to go. And LTA has even mentioned that they are going to limit the car growth to 1%. So why this highway?